Alrighty team, welcome back to another episode of Momentum. I'm your host, Big Les. Different co-host in the co-hosting chair today for this week's episode. Jakey out of action, stuck at work. So we've got the NRLW expert, Sophie Curtain, with us. Sophie, good to have you back on the podcast. It's been a while. I think round 3 was the last time we had you on. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Obviously, NRLW started, so a lot more to talk about on my end as obviously in utility mode on my series as a part of Momentum, but glad to be back to kind of discuss going into the third origin.
Yeah, 100%. It's a big game. Game 3, Suncorp. We've only done it a handful of times, so hopefully New South Wales can get up. We will get stuck straight into it. But just before we do, obviously you've got your podcast utility mode. How's it all been going? How have you been finding the podcasting scene?
Good. I think it'll be a little bit better when I get a few more guests on, because obviously talking to yourself, it can be not boring, but obviously it's only one point of view and it's more of you just talking rather than having a conversation. So I did an episode with Emily Curtain, so my twin, which was really good, and I actually quite enjoyed that, and I think there was a little bit more reception to that on social media as well. I remember earlier on we were joking because there was one or two reels that went viral on one of my first few episodes talking about the differences between the NRL and NRLW, and some of the comments in that got very heated. So it was interesting to see, I guess, kind of some of the feedback on that when I was purely just comparing between the two. But now that the season started, there's obviously a lot more content for me to cover and a lot more footage and obviously injury updates and things like that. So I think it's going really well. But it's still early days, so hopefully by the end of the season we've got quite a big community growing in the utility mode.
100%. Super keen to see it grow. Obviously, that's the NRLW show that we have as part of our Momentum Productions team. Got Momentum, the NRL show, and then NRLW covered by Sophie Curtain on utility mode. So make sure you watch both of those. They are on the Momentum YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Get stuck into all of that. But without further ado, State of Origin footy, Queensland up at Suncorp, New South Wales obviously haven't been great in the opening 2 games. Obviously been dominated pretty much in that second game. First game as well wasn't great. We barely got away with that win. If it wasn't for the Ponga send-off, we probably don't see New South Wales get over the line. What do you... Siri has something to say about it too. What do you think is going to be the key for New South Wales if they want to get the win in this one, Soph?
I think just starting fast. I think, as you said, in the first game we were very lucky for Ponga to get sent off for us to be able to claw our way back. But similar in the second game, we just let them get away from us too early. And I think we probably lacked a bit of physicality through the middle. And I think that's a combination of, multiple things. But with some new faces in the squad, we'll hopefully be able to kind of handle that physicality a little bit better. But yeah, the second game was hard to watch. So as I said, the new team, we've obviously got a couple of ins and outs in the New South Wales boys as well as the Queensland team. So hopefully, obviously, a little bit of wind, in our tails going into the third game, we'll be able to get the series, but it's going to be a tough one for us. Obviously, we've got some new outside backs in the squad, and there's been some reshuffles with the middles for New South Wales. So, hopefully a little bit of luck and a little bit of hard work, we'll be able to pull away the win. But yeah, I don't think it's going to be an easy one for sure.
Definitely not. Obviously, Queensland, they've been much better than us in both of the games so far. So it will be a bit of a mission for us New South Welshmen. But talking about those changes you were bringing up before, Api Coruscant, Brian To'o dropped out of the side along with Dylan Lucas and Katoni Staggs. We bring in Blake Brayley to come off the bench. Bradman Best comes in, the Game 3 specialist. You've got Hamole Olakawatu and Liam Martin in the rotation there. And Critter, he's also back in the side at right centre. A lot of changes to be made. Obviously, Jack Bostock, he comes in on that left wing as well, replacing Brian To'o. Do you feel like it's a bit of a risk making this many changes in the back line heading into a decider at Suncorp?
Definitely, but I know, as you said, with the first 2 performances, there had to be something that had to be done and changed. So whether that was obviously a few of the outside backs that were changed, some of them questionable. I don't know if I would have had the balls to make some of those calls, but I understand, I guess, for example, why Jack Bostock was picked over To'o in terms of his height and being, I guess, kind of schooled in that regard in the second game. But he's just a meter eater, and obviously his experience in those kind of high level stressful games. It'll be interesting to see how we're able to handle coming out of our own end. As I said, just putting his hand up for those tough carries. It'll be interesting to see how we, see Bradman Best involve himself in the game. Obviously, not having played in the first two, and not having played in Origin for a little while now as well.
Obviously, he's fresh back from injury too, Bradman Best, so a bit of a risk. I know that Loz loves to pick some injured players, it seems. Obviously, with Moses in the squad, you've got Ethan Strange, who's just been cleared to play in the decider as well, which is great news for New South Wales. Talk to me about Bostock and Marky Mark in regards to, as you were sort of speaking about there, getting out of your own end. How key is it having these big bodies that can handle, I guess, the physicality? Brian Toto is definitely one of the better yardage wingers in the competition. So taking him out of the side in regards to that yardage game and getting those post-contact meters, coming out of your own end, starting those sets off well, it's a big risk taking Brian Toto out of the side. But these big bodies, especially aerially as well, on a couple of those kick contests, when we get the ball to start our sets, talk to me about the addition of Bostock and then obviously Marky Mark keeping his spot for the decider and what those guys offer in regards to being in the air.
Oh, I think Mark, as you said, has definitely earned his spot in the squad going into game 3. But if you're looking at, I guess, the rest of the outside backs, obviously Toto, we're looking at, I guess, probably the less traditional winger of the squad, a little bit shorter, very strong. But I guess we've kind of replaced his size and shape and style of playing with Bradman Best coming into the centres. I know obviously they're different positions, but in terms of yardage carriage, hopefully he's able to kind of match those meter eaters from Toto. But looking at Bostock, Crichton, Tedesco and Mark, they're obviously much more, as you said, more aerially blessed and more of those strike players in attack. So I think, as you said, kind of in those good ball scenarios, I think they're going to be much more useful for obviously the kicks and then defensively being able to kind of jump and contest for those kicks out of our own end. But looking at Tedesco, obviously he's a very busy fullback, a bit of a workhorse, so he's always in and around the ball coming out of our own end. Bradman Best, as I said, more of a stronger, shorter, but very hard ball runner. And then we're looking at Crichton. I wouldn't say he's much of a meter eater in yardage. As I said, he's probably more one of our strike outside backs. But yeah, looking at Teddy, and then even Mark as well had obviously quite some strong carries and good involvements in the first 2 games. So I'd say they'd probably be up there in terms of the meters. But yeah, I'd say probably Bradman Best and Teddy just in terms of work rate. And then we'll have those aerial and strike players in Crichton, Mark and Bostock in attack.
Talk to me about the halves. Obviously, I think we should put to bed the chat around, Moses or Strange. We've gone with Moses. That's the decision that Laurie's made heading into the decider. But just talk to me about having those 2 attacking halves on the edges compared to that out-and-out runner in Ethan Strange. I know that, you look at the last couple of games, Ethan Strange has been there. He's probably been one of our better attacking players over the 2 games, even though New South Wales have been dominated in regards to field position and whatnot. In the 2 games, or majority of those 2 games. But Ethan Strange has by far been the more dangerous player. When he's had the ball in hand, he's been destructive with that running game. Do you find that Cleary, especially at this stage, I know that we look at that 2023 grand final with Cogger obviously coming onto the field and Cleary moving into that more second receiver type of role. But do you think at this stage of Cleary's career, post that grand final, looking at Cleary now, do you think he would be better suited to that more running 5'8"? And then it maybe, talking about Moses more specifically, having those guys that can play a bit more footy on the edges. What are you expecting to see in this decider from Moses and from Cleary?
Well, I guess kind of going back into the second game, we didn't see much of a running opportunity for Moses because obviously we were defending a large quantity of that game. And so when we did have the ball, it was more yardage, kind of transition footy. Obviously, he has that really, really big kick, as does Cleary. So I think it takes a little bit of pressure off Cleary in terms of always having to have the ball on last tackle and put up some of those big kicks. So that's a great asset of having him back in the squad. But I didn't think he was much of a running threat. I don't know whether it was because of obviously the concern for his hamstring or the fact that he hadn't played in, probably a month or so because of that injury. So, yeah, it could have been a fitness thing. It could have just been not being in good ball to be able to kind of give himself an opportunity to run. And we weren't winning the middle, so there was no quick play the ball. So he wasn't able to kind of play on that ad line like he normally would. So, look, I see Nathan Cleary as the out-and-out 7, and I think sometimes they probably compete against each other for who wants to take control. As you said, with Strangey in the squad in the first game, Cleary was the commander, and Strangey just had a little bit of freedom to kind of play that ad-lib eyes up footy, and as a result, he obviously had a very, very good game. And as I thought, was also one of our best attacking players. So it'll be interesting to see in game 3, hopefully Moses with a little bit more confidence in that hammy and able to take the line on a little bit more. But yeah, I definitely see Cleary kind of steering the ship around still. But it's frustrating to see how successful he's been at other areas of footy, just unfortunately not yet for New South Wales. So fingers crossed we can get this series under our belt and he can kind of, I guess, shut the critics up and I guess kind of quiet those whispers about him not being New South Wales or not being a dominant half at that state of origin level.
Do you think Cleary has his moment in this decider?
I hope so. I hope so. As I said, I think he hasn't had the opportunity to control the game as much as he'd like because we haven't been winning the ruck and we haven't been winning in the middle. So the opportunity just hasn't really been there for him. We've been kind of coming out of our own end and really just kind of holding on for dear life. Obviously, that first game we were lucky with the send-off, so we were able to play a little bit of footy and catch-up footy, obviously, to get the win. But again, that was, I guess, partly luck, obviously a bit of, finesse there from some of our players like the Strangies, like the Tedesco with that last try. But I think hopefully with this new forward pack, we're able to dominate a little bit more in the middle, generate some ruck speed, and then allow him to kind of control the game there and have obviously more of an influence on our attack. But I think, as I said, the last 2 games, we just haven't had the opportunity to let him kind of run the team and create some magic for our strike players on the edge.
Talk to me about the bench for New South Wales. We've obviously got Cam Murray, Aden Fanua-Blake, Hamole Olakau'atu, Blake Brayley, Ethan Strange, and Tolu Kula. How do you see the bench being used? You've obviously got Martin in the starting side and Hamole on the bench. That'll be interesting to see if those guys are a straight swap or if Hamole is going to be playing in the middle. I hope not. I really hope not, but it could always be a possibility with Loz. How do you see this bench being used and who are the unlucky 2 to miss out?
I think obviously it depends on injuries. I think Blake Brayley had a really good game in the first one. I feel a little bit bad for Victor Radley at the reserves. I thought he had some really physical carries and hits in the first 2 games, and I think that's a little bit of something that we lacked. And obviously with his alliance to England, we obviously haven't seen him in the Origin arena before, and I think he's the type of player that we need more of, just someone who's willing to put their hand up and do a lot of the dirty work in defence. Hopefully with Olakau'atu back in the squad, obviously he's able to come on and potentially give Liam Martin or Hudson Young a rest after obviously coming back from injury. We've got Mitch Barnett and obviously Payne Haas, who are 2, again, very big middles, but Mitch obviously not being back from ACL and not being in his finest form over the last couple of weeks compared to previous seasons that we've seen him. I think Murray will come on, and again, he's been playing really well, so he'll definitely get a crack. Aden Fanua-Blake, I don't think has had the biggest impact in this series so far. I don't know whether it's the speed and the fitness, but again, I just don't think he's had that physicality that we really needed. So hopefully, as you said, Hamole is able to come on. Whether that's in the middle or on the edge, I don't know. It depends on, I guess, how Liam Martin probably pulls up fitness-wise, having only been back for a few weeks. But then you look at his experience and that kind of outweighs Hamole probably in that Origin arena. And then if one of the halves go down, you look at whether Strangey comes on to replace one of them, or do you put him on as a 14 and just hope that he can pull something, miracle out and just kind of have him on there, not necessarily as a ball player, but just someone who's willing to put their hand up and obviously help him out wherever it needs to be. Similar to Murray, obviously, he's probably an out and right 13, but in the Origin space, we've seen him play all over the park. So I definitely think it just depends on injuries in the game. I definitely think Cameron Murray's going to get a go. I think we'd be silly not to have Olakau'atu. With Reece Robson in the last game, I think they left him on a little bit too long. Great defender, great service, but I think he just didn't have much spark in attack. And again, that was from fatigue, from just coming out of our own end and defending for so long. So hopefully with Brayley back, can get him a bit of a rest. And then, the last one I think is dependent on injuries. If we get an injury in our outside backs, then we've got Cooler. And then again, if we end up with an injury either of the halves, we chuck Strangey in there. What are your thoughts?
So, yeah, look, I do think Adam Fanua-Blake is going to be the one to miss out. I think that with the way that we've sort of played in regards to that smaller middle pack, I think that you're just looking at the fact that that's the style of footy that Laurie's going to go for, right? I think that's the style of play that he's looking at. So Adam Fanua-Blake doesn't suit that. You know, we've seen already in games 1 and 2, Saifidi doesn't get onto the field. We also saw Adam Fanua-Blake only play 9 minutes in game 2 as well. So I think he will be the unlucky bloke to miss out. I think you have to have Blake Brayley in there just with his creativity in and around the ruck, his ruck recognition. Defensively very solid as well, but the key thing you pointed on there is the creativity. I think that having a guy like Brayley coming off the bench and making a difference like that, you have Reece Robson's taking the sting out of the game, playing probably the first 35 to 40 minutes of the game, and then you have Blake Brayley coming on for the rest. I think that's realistically how you've got to use a guy like Blake Brayley, and I think Martin will probably play a bit of middle. I think that you'll have him come off after about 30 minutes. You'll see Hamole go on, and then Martin comes back on in the middle, replicating that Radley sort of role. And Murray has to get on. I'd argue that Murray should start, and you have Yowie coming off the bench. I think that's probably the way that I would go. Just with how good Yowie was off the bench in previous series, he just plays that more direct role out and out middle. Can still be the captain from the bench, I think a lot of people are making a big deal out of the fact that he's the skipper, so they're not going to put him on the bench. Well, look at the Dolphins every single week. Their captain's on the bench currently at the moment as well, and I know that it's club footy, but you can still have your captain coming off the bench and them still be a leader, and you've got leaders all throughout the park on the field anyway, so it isn't going to make too much of a difference. You've got Teddy, who's been a captain of this side before. You've got Cam Murray, who people argue should be the captain of this side as well. So you've got plenty of leaders in and around the park. I think that you can afford to throw Yowie on the bench, and then it just solves a bit of problems in and around the size factor as well off the bench. You have Yowie and maybe an Adam Fanua-Blake off the bench. All of a sudden, we've got a much larger pack that can go with Queensland a little bit more. But yeah, as I said, I don't think Adam Fanua-Blake comes on. I think that they do go for that smaller middle pack. I do like it. I think they've just got to use it right, though, and time the rotations perfectly, because game 2, they butchered it. So I think that the rotations definitely need to be a lot better. But yeah, look, as we said, I think that Adam Fanua-Blake's probably the unlucky bloke to miss out. I think Tolu Cooler's the other one. I think you have to play Ethan Strange. Spoke about it before. Best attacking player that we've had in the series so far. I'd definitely look to get him onto the field, probably at lock, just having him roaming both sides of the ruck, creating opportunities, just backing himself, running the footy, and then you have that running half along with those two organisers on the edges who will play footy there. Talking about Queensland, Soph, what stands out to you the most for the Queenslanders, and what's the process for them to get themselves this win in the decider?
I mean, they don't need to change too much. As we said, they've had a pretty dominant series so far and were very unlucky in that first game. We see Corey Horsburgh coming in, Jeremiah Nanai and Paddy Carrigan coming in, and then Fina Fuiaki and Collins out. So a little bit of a shake-up there, but nothing too crazy. Their key players in the spine have remained the same. We've obviously seen Sam Walker have an absolute blinder this series, despite some early concerns. But yeah, looking at their middle pack, Flegler, Grant, Tino, Nikora, Capewell, Cotter, Max Plath, and you've got Carrigan and Nanai on the bench. Reece Walsh, obviously a threat in any game of rugby league, particularly in a Queensland jersey. And then again, you've got Murray Tuolagi on the bench as well. So plenty of familiar faces and plenty of damaging footy players there as well. So honestly, any of those players can put their hand up and absolutely change the game. So yeah, definitely a scary thought to see, Selwyn Cobbo again having another devastating series. You've got Kalen Ponga, the Hammer, Jojo Fafita. Then you've got Cameron Munster, who's probably had a little bit of a quieter series than we'd normally see, and we know he can pull anything out of the bag. So some definitely scarier players, I guess, kind of coming from that Queensland side. We know that they're just tough in and out footy and play for the full 80 minutes. So I think all of them are threatening, but if we play our cards right, as you said, and I think time our interchanges a little bit better, we can definitely get away with the win, but it has to be an 80-minute performance.
100%. Paddy Carrigan, he's obviously coming back a little bit early from injury. He's supposed to be out with a syndesmosis injury for about 8 weeks. He's come back after 4 to be in this Queensland team. He's come out throughout the week and also said that if he has to play 80 minutes, he will, even though it's going to be hard to do from the bench. What are your thoughts on Paddy Carrigan coming back in? I've got a little bit of a theory around this and I want to get your thoughts. I don't think Paddy Carrigan plays. I think it's a Billy Slater mind games tactic, and I think Reece Walsh will come into the game. What are your thoughts?
No, I agree. I don't see him playing, or if he does, I don't see him playing a massive role in the game. Obviously, he's a great player, has experience at that level, is a very, very good middle forward and very, very good Queensland player. But as you said, coming back so early from an injury, if it was 6 weeks, we'd probably be having a different conversation, but 4 weeks out of the 8 is quite a quick turnaround. So, I think you might be right there that it might be a bit of a mind game, and you might end up, as you said, with Reece kind of coming on as that potential utility player, coming on in the halves or in the outside backs, or even just chucking him in the middle for some speed around the ruck and some unpredictability with his game.
Do you throw him through the middle, Reece Walsh? Are you risking him in the front line there?
I mean, as I said, looking at our the outside backs for Queensland, I don't know that you take any of them off, unless obviously there's injuries there. But I think Reece Walsh has, as I said, the unpredictability to be able to just carve up in the middle. And similar to playing fullback, he's taking carries up the middle and supporting through there anyway. I guess the difficulty there is just having him defending in the middle. So whether you put him on the edge and push a second rower in a little bit further or something like that, Billy's obviously a little bit of a magician, so he probably has some strategies for him coming on. But I definitely think not having him on the field is probably a worse off result for Queensland than potentially having him in the middle defending.
I know that Origin footy is the chance yourself, back yourself, all or nothing style of play, right? But you'd have Ponga, you'd have Munster, you'd have Sam, you'd have Harry, and then you'd have Walsh on the field. Do you feel like it is a couple of maybe too many chefs in the kitchen? Albeit you'd probably have Plath and maybe even Cotter on at the same time. So what are your thoughts? Is it too many chefs in the kitchen if Reece Walsh does get into the game? Or do you think that the master in Billy is just going to have a plan for how it's all going to work if Walsh does find his way into the game?
I mean, it definitely could be. It definitely could be, as you said, too many Indians, too many Chiefs, not enough Indians. But I think looking at players, as you said, like Cotter and, Max Plath, they're just your workhorses. I don't think they care too much about any of the fancy stuff. They're just willing to run hard and tackle hard and do whatever they need to do for their state. And so I'm assuming that, I guess, the rest of the team has that same mindset, and from Billy probably instilling in them that it's not, I guess, where you're playing or what exactly your role is. It's just you need to do what you need to do for your team and for your state. And, if that's not, I guess, in a position or in a certain role that you would normally have, I think just being chosen to represent your state is probably a big enough honour that they're able to maybe set their pride aside or their ego aside and just do the role that they've been chosen to do. So it could be, but I think at this level they're able to recognise that it's the best of the best at this level. And, for whatever reason, if they weren't selected in that position, they just need to do their role and focus on whatever they can within the team to get the result. And so if they're able to do that, then I think it'll work. But as you said, if there's too many kind of pointing the finger and things don't start going to plan and there's a little bit of bickering between the spine and some of those more key players, it might end up not working in their favour.
Alrighty, final predictions. How do you see Game 3 going? Is it New South Wales or do Queensland get the win up at Suncorp?
Well, I have to say New South Wales. I think it'll be a close one. I'm not certain that this one will be a blowout or any Origin is ever a blowout. So I'd say looking at the squads, it'll definitely be close, but I've got it back New South Wales. What about yourself?
Yeah, I'm going New South Wales 1-12 as well. I think it will be a close one. I think that New South Wales will have to fight hard if they want to get the job done here, and the bench needs to be worked meticulously. They really need to be a lot more methodical with their bench and their selections and just the rotations, getting guys on at the right time. If they are going to play Adam Fanua-Blake, back him in, play him for more than 20 minutes, not for 9. If that's the way that you're going to go and you're going to get that bigger middle out into the field, just have a plan. Like, don't just wing it and hope for the best. I think you've definitely got to have a real methodical plan. There's got to be a plan A, plan B, plan C. Like, there's got to be a plan for any scenario in the game. So just seeing that clear plan there for New South Wales, or at least having one there that, if we get into a tough spot, there's going to be a plan for us to get out of it. So, yeah, New South Wales for me, 1-12. I think it's a big one for Cleary. I think there at Suncorp obviously hasn't won a decider in his career yet. So it is going to be a big game for him. Hopefully he can get the job done in the 7 jersey. Him and Sam Walker, that's going to be the battle for mine. I think that Sam's been in meticulous form over the last couple of weeks since being in Origin camp. Had that one shocker a couple of weeks ago after game 1. But other than that, he's had a really, really good run of form, and so have the Roosters, to be fair. So I think that Sammy is going to be in red-hot form again in this one. The footy that he's played in the Origin Arena too has been outstanding. Going with Nathan Cleary, who obviously is yet to have that Origin moment, according to the naysayers. So Cleary's going to be in for a big one. Hopefully his first decider win. New South Wales 1-12. Soph, who's your Wally Lewis medal winner?
Oh, that's actually a really hard one. I'm going to go Cameron Murray.
Talk to me. Why do you think Cameron Murray is your Wally Lewis medal winner?
Well, we've spoken about, I guess, his impact over the first 2 games. And as I said, he is a leader through and through, just through his actions. So we know, obviously, he's had experience at that level. He's a workhorse in the middle. He's willing to do anything and everything for his state. And there's obviously been some questions around the captaincy and, I guess, the leadership roles within the squad. And we spoke about that earlier, and how some people think he should be the captain and should be starting over Yowie and having him come off the bench. So I definitely think he's earned his spot within this team, and whatever that looks like is obviously up to Laurie. But I definitely think he's had a great a great series so far, and I think he will continue that into the 3rd game.
I think he has been a guy that not a lot of people have spoken about for the Wally Lewis medal as well. Like, you look at the guys that have been brought up. For mine, it's probably Sam Walker, Selwyn Cobbo, the 2 guys that probably stand out for me as Wally Lewis medal winners. But for me, I've got to go Nathan Cleary. I've just got to back my guy in. I really want him to have that moment in State of Origin where he drags us to a win. Had a really good back end of game 1, obviously with the kick for Tedesco, the 40-20 before that, just a couple of different moments, setting up opportunities, obviously scoring a try himself. So I think that he's just got to, dig the heels in, have a big moment, show that he's the chief in this side. I think it's really important that Moses doesn't overplay his hand. I think Moses needs to go purely into that supporting role. If he can, chance his arm a little bit, run the footy, play as that out and out 5'8". It might actually bring the best out of Moses as well, because even for Parramatta on the weekend, he really tried to overplay his hand and try and drag Parramatta out of the tough spot they were in against South Sydney. I do think that it's an opportunity for our man in Moses to sort of flip the script on himself, play a little bit more of a 5'8" role, and then I think that good footy will come off the back of that. Play a bit of footy, chance his arm on the edge, and then Cleary can be that out-and-out chief. He can direct play and obviously take a fair share of the kicking as well, I think, particularly with the injury around Moses. So Cleary for me, man of the match, the Wally Lewis medal winner. That's our predictions for State of Origin. Guys, obviously Wednesday night, we'll be doing a live stream with Rabbitohs Radio podcast. Chaps, we'll be calling that one. We'll be there, obviously, in the Big Les HQ right here on this lounge, calling that game. So make sure to get stuck in to that Wednesday night. All right, team, let's get stuck into the NRL games. Sophie's just jumped off for this little bit, and then we'll go back to Sophie for the NRLW coverage. But let's get stuck into the footy, because there was only 5 games here, kicking off with the Panthers and the Rabbitohs, 36-14, the final scoreline. The Panthers were very good. Credit to their systems. They've been up and down during this period, and even when a couple of their stars have been back, they have dropped a couple games against some bottom sides this year. But for the Panthers, were really good. In this one, they seem to have the jump on us for majority of this game. The Dane Jennings try at the very, very start of the game. Cody Walker obviously has the kick, goes to the bin. I don't think it would have made the biggest of differences to the scoreline. Dylan Edwards obviously scored pretty much in the second set of the game. And, Tommy Jenkins obviously scored 3 tries. He's going to get closer and closer to that record as the season goes on. But it was just the brilliance of that young Penrith system and some of the guys coming through in this side. Billy Phillips was outstanding. Has to go into the back row before kick-off with IPAP out. I thought that he was really, really good. Young Billy Phillips really held his own there. Played 75 minutes, 133 run meters, 4 tackle busts, 40 tackles. Thought he was outstanding. And I also thought that Liam Henry was really good through the middle too, like nearly 200 meters there. He was a beast. He would have been the guy probably moving forward. You know, Moses Leota, he's set to leave obviously over the next couple of seasons, and it just looks like Liam Henry could have really been that guy. But, you know, they've got Lindsay Smith there. He seems to be a bit of a Yo replacement depending on what Yo does over the next couple of years. He replicates Yo's style of footy really, really well. But yeah, Liam Henry's the one where I really do think the Panthers should have considered keeping him, but they can't keep everyone. They've obviously got to make some tough decisions on a couple of players to sort of shape out their roster. Edwards was really good. Obviously, the try at the start, but I thought he laid on some really nice opportunities on either side of the ruck. Roamed really well, got through a ton of work. Jenkins, just coming out of his own end, the 3 tries, 9 tackle busts, 169 run meters. Just a really well-oiled Penrith machine. Obviously, they moved Blaze Salungi into the centres before kickoff too. Really interesting call there made by the Panthers, but it does seem like they've just tried to take a bit of pressure off him throughout the origin period. They just want to sort of get him playing his best footy during this time and just experiment with a couple of different things as well. See how Jay Cole goes, give him a couple of opportunities in first grade as well. Just the one opportunity here while Nathan Cleary's out because, you know, obviously Cleary's out, Yo's out. There's a couple of guys out of this team, and it really has been on Blaze Salungi over the origin period in these sort of games where he's been the guy everyone's looked at to sort of drag Penrith to these wins. I thought it was a really good idea by Ivan Cleary just to take the pressure off him, put him in the centres for a game, just let him run the footy. The defence still wasn't great, and just that's been a little bit of an issue, I guess, for Blaze this year. It has been the defence coming into this Panthers side over the last 2 years. Really, that's been what people have looked at, and obviously last year, his first year in the Penrith system, it took him a while to get into the team and get into first grade due to the fact that he had to work on his defence throughout the preseason. It's definitely gotten a lot better, but it does need a little bit of work, especially as they get closer and closer to finals. For the Bunnies, I thought they were okay. Thought they did okay. Just a couple of errors in the second half. Penrith run away with it there. I thought that Dane Jennings looked very, very good. Like 9 tackle busts for an 18-year-old who's never played a game of New South Wales Cup and only has played 5 games of flag. It's unbelievable. It's really, really good what he's doing in this Rabbitohs side, considering he hasn't played a game of Cup and hasn't gotten used to that physicality yet. Like, to play 5 games of flag, like the most amount of footy he's played in a junior grade team has been for SG Ball. So, Dane Jennings doing some incredible things. Played a schoolboys at the back end of last year as well. Looked very good there. Obviously, with Antonio Verhoeven, those two really carved up in that game. But Dane Jennings, he's definitely more of a centre. Keen to see him get some more reps at centre. Playing in the under-19s Origin game too. Didn't get a lot of pill in that one. I was hoping that he'd have a bit more of an impact in that game, but he was certainly good in this one. Played on the wing. I thought his check and release was quite good. I thought that in both this one and the game, he only got 20 minutes last week. I thought that his check and release was pretty good. So I think that he's definitely adjusting a lot quicker to what I thought he would, being shoved out there on the wing, 18 years old. Thought it would take a year or so for him to come into this side, but he's really fast-tracked it, and be interesting to see, when a couple of guys come back over the next couple of weeks and he does go back to Cup, how that adjustment sort of continues, and if he does go back there and just carve up to the point where he's forcing his way in over the next season or so. Obviously, him and Talanoa Penatani will be competing for spots. You got the Troll Seagull, who's playing in the centres at the moment as well, so plenty of competition there for South Sydney. Some really good depth with some youngsters killing it at the moment. Seawalt's been really good over the last couple of weeks. Thought he had a really good, nice couple of touches in this game as well. Set up the Ed Cozzy try. Cozzy obviously played on the left with Dane Jennings on the right. Wardy and Walker looked good. Obviously, Cody Walker had that moment, the kick. He shouldn't have done it. He came out, he apologised. He's going to be out for a week. It really does suck. And when he's the captain of this side, he's 34, 35 years of age. I think that Cody Walker, he's definitely got to get that in check, especially if he's going to play on next year. It is something that he is going to have to work on there, just really controlling his emotions a little bit better. Being the most experienced player in this roster, in this game, and to have a moment like that and now to be suspended for a week, it's the last thing that South Sydney need with a bunch of injuries in this team already. Tallis Duncan was very good. Dave Fafita, good. Keon was a beast in this one as well. 80 minutes, 194 run meters, and 50 tackles with only one miss. Feels like we just expect these numbers from Keon Kalamatangi week to week now. He's just an absolute beast. Has been for the last couple of weeks, and it's similar to sort of Payne Haas. Like, they are getting the most out of him that they possibly can, knowing that he is leaving next year. He's still playing some really good footy. Very unlucky not to be playing for New South Wales this season. Dragons getting the job done over the West Tigers. I went to this game out in Cogra. Really good performance by the Dragons. I thought that they did very well defensively in this game. It was their best defensive performance by a country mile. The edges were a lot more shored up. And I think that Valentine Holmes, like, a lot of people are talking about his performance. He was outstanding, but this was on the wing. Majority of this performance was on the wing. Obviously, they lost Tyrell Sloan for after the first 30 minutes or so. And, the back 50 minutes of the game, Val Holmes was on the wing, and that's where he did most of his work. So I'd seriously consider moving him there. They've got Moses Sully coming back. Jake, he's been talking about it the last couple of weeks on momentum. But yeah, I'd really consider moving Valentine Holmes to the wing and having him out there. I think that his work rate as well, bringing the ball back, he can still do that at a pretty solid click. And then just defensively as well, like 12 tackles, 0 missed. I thought he was really, really good. So definitely something that I'd be considering here. Val Holmes to the wing, if that's going to be getting the best footy out of him back into this year, going into next year as well. Matt Feeney was pretty good as well. I thought he was one of their better players too, attacking. I know Valentine Holmes obviously had the unbelievable performance, but Matt Feeney had some really big moments as well. Sedu 2 was really strong coming out of his own end as well. Atkinson for me was a big one. Him and Kyle have really started to gel, and they're really just working on this combination. Kyle Flanagan's definitely more of the support player. Atkinson is definitely more of the number 7 with the kicking and organising. I thought he looked quite good. Daniel Atkinson in this game, I thought it was one of his best performances of the year, to be fair, or at least in a Dragons jersey. Really, really solid stuff from Dan Atkinson. I think that this is definitely the role for him, which is funny because, you go full circle, and this was the role that he was going to play at the start of the year anyway under Shane Flanagan, but he's definitely gotten more comfortable in this role. Kicking-wise, been very good. And I think for Flanagan as well, like, if he is going to take on this more supporting role, I want him to run the footy more. I really want him to sort of chance his arm a little bit more, take on the line, because that's when Flanagan has been at his most dangerous in this Dragon side as well. Locko, Toby Couchman, Ryan Couchman, all outstanding through the middle there as always. For the Tigers, just the errors in this game, really costly. And even though the Dragons didn't have as much ball, they executed a lot better, especially in the second half. They were really, really good. Just the errors and the Tigers, unfortunately, defensively, just couldn't hold out the Dragons at stages. The Dragons were getting really good ascendancy through the middle, in a majority of their sets. Even though the Tigers got good ascendancy as well, and, Dewey scored 2 tries. Terrell May was very strong. They just couldn't get the job done in the dying moments. Second half, they really struggled. Api Coruscant comes off, and things changed pretty dramatically for the West Tigers. I thought that Uezesi Lanyon did well, coming on and sort of trying to get stuck into the game. But Api Coruscant's creativity around the ruck is so key for them, and they definitely missed him after that 50-minute mark when he came off the field. The Broncos and the Sharkies, we are going to fly through these guys because we want to keep it a relatively similar structured show and a similar time frame show. We do get stuck deep into the NRLW, having Sophie Curtain on the show. So we want to obviously leave some time for that as well. The Broncos and the Sharkies, 28-16, the final scoreline in this one. Really enjoyed the Sharkies' performance. I know that it was against a depleted Broncos team, but Hines is in some good form, and I think that there's been a lot of criticism in regards to, when Hines is out of the side, they have a really good record winning, and they've been pretty solid without him, to be fair, but Hines is a really, really talented footballer, and when he is in the side, they do go well as well. When he's in the side, and he's playing good footy and he's in a good mindset. That's when he's at his most dangerous. And he was really good in this game. Got through a ton of work defensively and still laid on 2 tries in the second half. Thought he looked very good. Had a bit of a rough start to the game and took some time to warm into the contest. But I thought that, after the first half, especially in the second half, he was really, really good. Trindle was solid as well, kicking game-wise. Thought the back 5 did extremely well. Mulatalo, Katoa, Ramy and Iro was just a different beast, especially in that second half. Him and Staggs were going at it there, and I think Iro won that battle. Hazelton was strong through the middle. Calhoun just does some pretty incredible things. 37 tackles, 0 missed, 128 run meters. Very, very strong for the Sharkies. He's going to be a future rep player for sure. I think he's going to be the 13 for them moving forward as well once McInnes leaves. I think that's just the natural progression there. I think you'll see Calhoun take that 13 jersey. Talakai, very strong as well in the little stint that he had, 34 minutes. I think without Adenfanor Blake, it was really, really a strong performance through the middle of the field. They definitely got a fair amount of ascendancy against the Broncos side that, is still pretty young. Like Va'a Semu's like 21, 22, I believe. Va'a Semu's still pretty young. 20, there's no date of birth there for Va'a Semu. That's awesome. But he's still pretty young and pretty fresh into first grade. They've had a pretty young side out there and a pretty inexperienced NRL side. Like Preston Ricky's only probably played, I'd say, 20 games at most. Willison's probably played about 50 games now. You've got Tolte, who's played about 20-odd games. Jaden Hunt didn't get on the field. Luke Gale and Joshua Corrick obviously made their NRL debuts and played some pretty solid minutes. So very inexperienced pack. Duffy's only in his 4th or 5th NRL game now as well. I thought they had a pretty tough night as well. Made a couple of errors. Ben Hunt wasn't his best performance either. Unfortunately, the Sharks just had all their guys in and there's not really much else to it. They obviously executed a lot better considering that they had a lot of their guys in this team. Let's get back to where I was. Eels and the Manly Seagulls. Eels getting the job done 23-14. Bit of an upset win there for the Parramatta Eels at home. Thought they were pretty good. Defensively, again, for me, was the standout. I thought they really turned up in defence, and Manly did throw a little bit at them there. I feel like Manly also struggled without Hamole, and I said it on my podcast, like, you look at Manly in this one, and obviously in the last couple of seasons, when Tom Trbojevic hasn't been in the side, they've sort of lacked that confidence. I feel like they've had a lot of confidence without Turbo this year, and they've had guys like Clayton who's really emerged and become really good. They've had Tolu Kula, who's obviously playing Origin on the bench in this game, but obviously played the first 2 games there in the centres. So you've got guys that are playing out of their skin in this side, and a lot of depth at fullback in particular. And the loss of Tom Trbojevic in this side doesn't make them lose a lot of confidence anymore, whereas, a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, it really has. I feel like Hamole is now that dude, because Hamole's been probably the best player in the NRL this season so far, and particularly, as soon as Kieran Foran took over, he has been the best player in the NRL form-wise. He's been absolutely destructive. I feel like he's come out of this side and they've really they obviously lacked that guy to really break the game open for them, and their confidence dipped a lot. Luke Brooks, obviously a big loss out in the halves and a bit of inexperience there, and Joey Walsh is only playing his 4th NRL game. I still thought he was pretty good, to be honest, Joey Walsh. Thought he ran the ball well, took his chances on. It's pretty much what I expected a young half to do, just sort of try and run the footy and let the rest speak for itself. Jamal Fogarty definitely had to do a lot more of the work when it came to kicking the footy and getting them out of yardage. But I thought that Joey Walsh was okay. You can just tell that there's a bit of inexperience there in the halves. Tom Trbojevic looked very good at fullback, despite them obviously being down. Lehigh obviously had a big performance yardage-wise as well. Scored a try, nearly scored 2. It was the completion rate, unfortunately, 65%, really let them down. Albeit, Parramatta completed at 76%, so it wasn't too much better from Parramatta either. Isaiah Iongi was massive. We talked about it in the last couple of weeks, but the back 3 for Parramatta and the yardage that they're able to generate, That's sort of the key to shutting them down. If you can shut down the back three and then you can really target that three-man defense of Parramatta, you're going to beat them by a lot of points. And I think that Manly did miss the trick. They had Waddell there in the back row, who is definitely more of a middle. And they really just struggled to really hit those holes well. I thought Pezzett actually aimed up defensively a lot. And, Volkman only missed 2 tackles. Pezzett missed 3. It's not overly bad. It's not as bad as what we've seen in previous weeks. And then both of those guys just attacked the game really well. Pezzett was outstanding. Obviously, that run, kicks for himself, scores that try. Volkman ran the footy quite a bit. He obviously scored in this one as well. Jack Williams was strong through the middle. I thought that Kelma Tuolungi had a really strong game as well. So, Eels firing. Really good to see them gravel in over the Manly Seagulls here. A side that is hot at the moment, and maybe it's the reality check that Manly need to really start to set them alight and potentially run for a top 4 spot. And then the Newcastle Knights and the Dolphins, probably one of the better games of the weekend. I thought that Newcastle were very strong in this one. They were definitely the better side, despite the lower completion rate. I actually thought that they were the better team in this one. They definitely got a lot more field position than what the Dolphins did. Fletcher Sharp was really good at fullback. I thought that Sandon Smith just adds a little bit of structure to what is a very run-first, dynamic, attacking-based halves a spine, just in general, with KP, Sharp, and Brown in there. Smith just adds a little bit of structure in there, and I feel like it was just a little bit of what they needed just to get them in the right spots towards the back end of the game. Brown's running game was outstanding. Defensively was very strong as well. As I said, Sharp was good. Gags was good. Dominic Young and Greg Marju really good out of yardage. Started their sets off really well and went at the edge chasers of the Dolphins as well. Very physical with some of their takebacks. They lost Saifidi early and still managed to grind. Obviously, they lost, Trey Mooney before kickoff as well. So they did extremely well with a very inexperienced pack, other than Tyson Frizzell, obviously, who had to play a big chunk of minutes, and Cody Hopwood obviously started in this game as well. Thought they did extremely well. Young bloke, Lachlan Crouch, really, really good. He's obviously an under-19s origin player from last year. Very good performance from him. 25 tackles, 0 missed, and 95 metres there in 41 minutes in his NRL debut. I thought he was very, very strong. Lockie Crouch, very good performance from him. Fletcher Hunt also carried himself well at stages in the centres. A couple of errors there, but definitely a lot better from him in that centre position. I thought that Newcastle were just the better side in this one. They probably should have scored more tries, is probably the only criticism I have of them, and that just goes back to a little bit of their completion rate. For the Dolphins, they just missed the class of an Isaiah Katoa there in the number 7 jersey. Brad Schneider is still in his first 50 NRL games, so he is still quite inexperienced. I think that showed a little bit in this one, albeit Isaiah Katoa, I think he's only just played just under 100 games of first grade too. He's sort of been in first grade since the Dolphins started, so it's his fourth or fifth year now. Isaiah Katoa, 2020, I want to say 2022, 2023, the Dolphins started, so it'd be like fourth year of first grade, let's say, for Isaiah Katoa, and I feel like they just missed that magic touch there. He's a terrific player. They missed the class on the end of sets in the kicking game. Nick Rima and Marshall King obviously played well and kept this score level with some brilliance in attack. Farnworth's running game, Avarillo, I thought was outstanding late on. 2 of the tries in this game as well. Asako, Nafa'u, very good. The back 5 was really good for the Dolphins. They just didn't match it as well in the middle. I thought their best forward in this game, best forwards, Donahue, when he came on, was massive. He obviously scored a try there through the middle of the field. Finafuiaki as well, very big game from him. Thought he was outstanding. So both of those guys very good in this contest. And Dolphins just unlucky. I think the Knights were the better side in this one, despite the lower completion rate. I thought the Dolphins definitely did well to get the job done there. Let's get back to the NRLW Day night. Let's get stuck into the NRLW, Soph. You've had 2 key games for us. Take it away. What was the first one?
So the first game that I chose to discuss, I guess, after the weekend was the Tigers defeating Parramatta 28-16. So looking at their previous NRLW series, they haven't been too successful. I believe in their first 3 seasons, they won a total of 5 games. So the 2023 won the first two, 2024 won the last two, and then 2025 only winning one game. Have done some heavy recruiting in the off season, and new coach, completely new staff, all throughout the women's program. So the head of football and the head of women's pathways have all been changed. So looking at an entirely new club in terms of the women's perspective. Listening to the commentators on the game, was actually a little bit frustrating. They were talking about the experience in the Parramatta Eels team, and don't get me wrong, they're quite an evenly competitive team. But looking at the fact that the Tigers have, as I said, done some heavy recruiting and got some really experienced players in their spine and across some key positions, and as I said, kind of more evenly spread out across the field, I thought it was an easy decision to choose Tigers over Para, and the commentators were quite shocked to see the Tigers come away with the win. They were able to get quite a big takeaway early on, with most of their tries coming in the first half, and then Parramatta clawed their way back to 16 points in the second half. But were you able to catch any of the game?
Look, I've definitely seen some clips. I know that Racene Mcgregor had a really good game at 7. She obviously set up a couple tries there. Qld'S obviously getting over. I thought she had a really strong game too with a couple of her carries, just watching some of the clips. But, I mean, looking at some of the names over the roster as well that they've got in this team, like Racene Mcgregor is a huge recruit, but, Qld'S obviously, they've been there the last couple of years. Charlie Bent, Holly Wheeler, they've got some really, really good forwards in this side. Talk to me about some of the off-season recruits and who have been some of your favourites to watch in this opening game.
Well, as you said, Racene's probably the biggest one and probably their best investment as of round one. She controlled the team so well and had probably the biggest impact on the scoreline, I believe, being involved in most of their tries. I think there was only one scored on that left edge with Shaylee Bent going over from a nice drop play from Lutu, but Racene had the ball on a dime with some of her kicks into the corner for their outside backs, and then also playing some real nice shape. As I said, again, on that right side, really taking control. Defensively, their middles were very physical, as you said, the likes of Holly Wheeler, Qld'S, Shaylee, Bent, and then you've got Christian Pio, Sala Togatuki, some of the remaining players from previous seasons, just absolutely dominating in the middle of the ruck. So, yeah, some really, really good recruits. I think if Ray can stay healthy and fit for the remainder of the series, they're finals contenders. But if not, I don't know that they have that attacking finesse with Lutu leading the park. She's more of a quieter half, is able to just kind of pull things and play a little bit of ad-lib, but I don't think she has the experience or the voice to kind of lead a team around the park, particularly ones where you've got such experienced players inside and out you, so being comfortable enough to own a team who are much older than you and much more experienced than you in the middles that they've got. So, yeah, if she can stay fit and healthy, I think they're definitely going to be a finals contenders. But unfortunately, if she gets injured, I don't know that they have that control or anyone in this spine who can kind of replace her.
Where did it go wrong for the Parramatta Eels?
A little bit all over the shop. Some very, very silly errors from Para. There was one that I can remember off the top of my head with a tap. So they've got a penalty coming out of their own end. They've kicked for touch, and then the centre's tapped it and passed it to the second rower and just thrown it behind her, and she's ended up dropping the ball. It's just silly things like that. So I think one thing, they were playing particularly to one side, which is fine, and they had quite a lot of success on that left edge with Tohu Hiku at 6, but then looking at Rachel Pearson, who's a little bit more of an experienced half and more of a leader within that team, kicking a 40-30. But in good ball, I think that they relied a little bit too much on Elsie and some of their middles to do some crash plays, and they weren't super creative with their good ball at times. But I think mostly coming out of their own end, they just were losing the ball and giving away really silly penalties and errors, particularly something that I've noticed in the NRL compared to the NRLW compared to the NRL is the lack of confidence in catching the ball and contesting for the ball. So whether that's kickoffs, whether that's last tackles, whether that's dropouts, I've noticed there's a big difference in the outside backs and the NRLW in contesting for the ball. So I think that was something that Parramatta lacked as well. They were letting the ball bounce, and then it would bounce favourably for the Tigers and things like that. And then also, as I said, just some embarrassing and just some poor errors coming out of their own end that just gave Tigers good ball, and just were able to kind of build pressure and put them under the pump. And then because of that, they were obviously too tired to do anything spectacular in attack.
Talk to me about the next game that you had there.
So the next game that I had was the Dogs and the Warriors. So just going into the score, sorry for that, Tigers Para game was 28-16, win for the Tigers. The Warriors defeated the Bulldogs 32-10. And so although that seems somewhat close, it's worth noting that the Warriors missed all but one kick. So most of the tries for the Warriors were on the wing. And so if they had converted all of their tries, it would have been a 42-10 win. And that is with a player in the bin in the first half. So there was a nasty hip drop on Doggies halfback Taylor Preston, who looked to be injured for the rest of the game, if not the rest of the season, then popped up and started hopping around on the one leg and was able to continue the game and finish the game, thankfully. But that sent Maya Hill-Moana, one of the starting props for the Warriors, into the bin for 10 minutes, and I believe she's been suspended for a week or two for that. But again, for most of the games that I saw over the weekend in the NRLW, not much, obviously, of a preseason. They only played one trial game. They haven't played much footy for, nearly 8 months, potentially longer. And it definitely showed, obviously, those earlier rounds, players are finding their feet. Teams are building connections and building their fitness. So there's definitely a lot of errors early, and that showed as well in this Warriors game. So early on, plenty of penalties and errors from both teams. But we saw the Warriors were just able to kind of take control after the sin bin and put on plenty of points going into halftime and then again in the second half. We saw a very physical defense from both teams. So looking at the squad for the Warriors, they're quite a big middle pack, and even some of their outside backs are quite big and strong and powerful. So there's plenty of big hits throughout that game. And I saw the NRLW posted the tackle of the week was, I believe, Rory Owen against Emily Bass in a try-saving tackle. But I definitely thought that they'd missed a few big hits in the Warriors game that were better contenders for the tackle of the week. It took, I believe, about 20 minutes for the Warriors to kind of get into the game and score the first points. Again, that was just on the back of poor completions and errors, but both teams defending really strongly. We saw Taylor Preston controlling field position with some early kicks in a big kicking game, and Bulldogs completing their sets early on. Despite, obviously, the sin bin that we saw from Maya Hill, they weren't able to score too many points early on. But Gale broke the tryless game around 20 minutes in, as I said, with just a nice dummy on that left edge. So she's definitely one of their better recruits in the off-season, coming from the Brisbane Broncos. And then we saw Pucky score a double on that left edge, despite not scoring, I believe, since 2022 or 2023. So it's been quite a few years since she scored on the left edge as a centre, which is interesting, particularly after a decent season last year. But it was good to see her get some points. Did you get any time to watch the game on the weekend between the Warriors and the Dogs?
I didn't. Was moving around quite a bit on the Sunday. Also was out a lot on the Saturday, getting home from Cogra. I went to the Dragons game on the weekend, which was good.
See that.
But yeah, look, really good to see the Warriors firing, especially because, they've had a couple of rugby union recruits, I believe, as well. So
definitely have, yeah.
Always a difficult transition, but it's good to sort of see that it is paying off. And you got some of the girls like Gale as well, who's very, very talented. She's played a bit of fullback as well at Brisbane.
Yeah, definitely. So looking at her, I guess, in terms of some of the recruits, she was probably one of the more notable recruits. As you said, some union girls coming across as well. We've got Stacey Waka, we've got Mela Hufanga, who came from Brisbane as well, and a couple of other players that have come from union or come from the more local pathways within New Zealand. So great to see some of those get a go on the weekend and make their debuts or make their club debuts. But I think the thing that's going to let the Warriors down is their casualty ward. So it's round 1, and they've already got what looks like to be 7 pretty serious injuries throughout their squad. So I had a look today, and so we've got 2 injuries from the game on the weekend. So the right winger, Peyton Takamoana, was not able to finish the game, so she went down for a try in the right corner with her arm outstretched, and as we see in a lot of wingers, end up injuring their shoulders. So she came out of the sheds at halftime with a sling on, so she wasn't able to finish the game. And then we saw Layshawn Albert-Jones unable to finish the game with a leg injury as well. So they were 2 from the game yesterday, but then we saw 5 come from their preseason game or just preseason in general, as well as a couple of suspensions. So we saw Mele Hufanga with a hamstring injury who won't be back until round 3 or 4. We saw Kaya Atai with a broken thumb from the trial. Mutz with a foot injury, and she won't be back till around 5 or 6, so around halfway through the season, as well as Anastasia with an ankle injury coming back around 4 or 5. Maya Hill, as I said, suspended for that hip drop on the weekend. Ivana Luatiti, again suspended, I believe, from the trial. And then we've got Tyra Watiri, who's out all season with an ACL that she sustained in the off-season. So that's already 7 pretty serious injuries going into round 1. So I think that'll probably be their biggest downfall going into the remainder of the season, is just being able to field a healthy team and field their most experienced team. And looking at it, there's quite a few middles in there. And we know there's obviously a high rotation of middles in the NRL and NRLW due to obviously the contact that they, I guess, undertake during the game. So despite obviously a first dominant win, it'll be interesting to see if they can maintain that with all of the injuries that they've already had, and it's only round 1.
All right, chat to me about the other games as well. So starting off with the Sharkies and the Knights, who is the standout player from that game?
I think probably Yasmin Meeks, very experienced player for Newcastle. So she's on their edge playing second row. Had some really, really good carries coming out of yardage, as well as good ball running those nice lines on the edge, as well as some really, really important kick pressure. So some of the Cronulla halves have got really, really big kicks. So it was nice to see her having some unrelenting kick pressure to help Newcastle take away the win for round 1. We also saw a couple of other really standout performances. We saw Kira Dibb coming from Cowboys, had a big impact on the game as well. I believe getting some of the Dally M points. So Yasmin Meeks, I think, was leading with 6. Quincy Dodd, who is the Cronulla hooker, who played pretty big minutes and had some really nice carries for Sharkies. I think 2 points. Kira Dibb, who is the 6 for Newcastle, 2 points as well. And then a few other Union recruits, Sydney Taylor with a point as well for the Dally M. But I think there were some other, I guess, important things to note from that game. A few injuries, but what I did notice for the weekend of the NRLW games, I believe there was like 4 or 5 sin bins in 6 games. So there was 2 sin bins in the first game between Sharks and Newcastle. One was a hip drop and one was making contact with a kicker's leg. So one from each team being sent off. There was another couple of send-offs, as I said, throughout the weekend just for various offences. But I definitely think that helped Newcastle secure the win. Some interesting points, though, in terms of their selections. We saw one of their marquee players, Botil Vetti Welsh, for Newcastle, playing in the reserve grade team. So that was definitely an interesting selection on Newcastle's behalf. We saw Lillian White, quite a young girl, coming through and playing in that fullback position. Did end up injuring her ankle, as I said, one of the outside backs for Cronulla hip drop on her, and ended up getting 10 in the bin. But yeah, definitely some opportunity there for improvement. As I said earlier, there's lots of errors in the NRLW earlier on, just because of the lack of footy that they've been able to play over the last 8 to 12 months. So hopefully we're able to see a little bit more consistency from both teams over the next couple of weeks and the remainder of the season. But yeah, some new faces for both teams as well, which was nice to see the game growing and some more of the Union girls coming across with players like Maddie Ashby and a couple of other girls that have been signed to the different NRLW clubs. Have you had much of a chance to look through either of those two squads?
No, look, I haven't. I know that Kira Dibb went there to replace Jessie Southwell.
Yep.
Really good pick up there coming over from North Queensland. So hopefully they can get a bit of success with her at 7 there. It'll be interesting to see how they go and how they respond to a couple of losses because they lost Taryn Aiken mid-season last year as well, yeah?
So the Roosters lost Taryn Aiken.
The Roosters lost Taryn Aiken, but she was at the Knights, right? She also left the Knights earlier.
What year? She was.
I swear Taryn Aiken was at the Knights.
She was in Brizzy. She left, I believe what year are we in, 2026? I believe she left Brizzy in 2024 and then went to Roosters and then did her ACL. So she's there for a second year, but I don't think Taryn Aiken was at Newcastle. No, I think, Taryn Aiken was history of being a Queensland girl up until the Roosters signed her 2 years ago.
Yeah, okay. There you go. All right. Speaking of the Roosters, 34-10, they obviously got the job done over the Titans. Talk to me about Taryn Aiken, obviously the standout performer in this one there at 7, yeah?
Yes, definitely. As you said, standout player. I mean, the whole squad are a standout. If I'm being completely honest, looking at obviously their squad across the board, it's majority of the Jillaroos team and some of the internationals there for the Kiwi Ferns and some other players as well. So looking at them, it's hard to pinpoint a single player, but I'd say, as you said, Taryn Aiken, Liv Koenig is always up there as well, plays big minutes in the middle, really good ball player as well as a defensive middle as well. Jocelyn Kelleher, some really big kicks from her on the edge as well. And then we saw another Union recruit join the Roosters coming off the bench, I believe. And then we saw Tegan Levi, which was probably one of the bigger signings in the off-season from the Union players, join the Titans at the starting in the halves, and I believe she scored on the weekend as well. So some luck for her early on. Again, unlucky obviously with the loss against the Roosters, but looking at, the Roosters and the Broncos are two very, very difficult teams to beat. And if you look at their squads, it's unbelievable that they're able to fit all of it in one team based on the cap and how that works. But yeah, the Titans, very young squad, some experienced players, sprinkled throughout with Ivani Politi, Georgia Hale and a couple of Jamie Chapman. But just looking at the Roosters squad, there's no way that they're able to handle that for the full 70 minutes. So Taryn Aiken leading him around the park with obviously strike players everywhere, some big middles with Millie Elliott, and a couple of other players. You've got Keely Nizza leading them through in the spine, Corbin Baxter, you've got Isabel Kelly, Jess Surges, Jamie Fressard, so Jasmine Strange, plenty of other very, very experienced players. You've got Rima Butler. I'm basically rattling off almost the entire New South Wales side. So any team versing them in the NRLW at any stage is going to have trouble beating the Roosters and definitely the Broncos as well. So, it's hard to pick against the Roosters, I guess, as in the tips, if anyone's listening. So if you're not a NRLW fan or don't know much about the NRLW team and you're looking, I guess, to kind of get invested, the two, I guess, front runners for this season and most seasons are the Roosters and Broncos. So hopefully we're able to see the competition even out a little bit more in the future. But looking at the Broncos score against the Cowboys, it was 50-4. So two very big wins there. Again, some standouts for the Broncos there were Tamika Upton, Jessie Southwell, as you said, kind of leaving the Knights to join the already stacked Brisbane team. I saw also Emma Manzelman, the hooker for Cowboys, have a really good game as well, and I believe she was given some Dally M points on the back of that, as well as Caitlin Irwin, one of the outside backs and new recruits for the Brisbane Broncos, having quite a successful game there as well. So lots to kind of keep up with in terms of the NRLW on the weekend, and plenty of injuries. So we'll see some new players and some new faces throughout the season. But I wanted to get your opinion on something from the Roosters game. So looking at some of the feedback from John Strange, who is the Roosters coach, he said he was really disappointed after watching the game. Not the way it was played, but just how slow the ruck was. And there's been a little bit of debate about whether we should bring in the 6 again into the women's game. What are your thoughts on having the 6 again to allow, I guess, a faster ruck and a faster play the ball?
It depends what the product that you're trying to build, right? I mean, we looked at the 6 again at the start of this year for the NRL, and a couple of rule changes as well, particularly extending it back to the 20s. It's affected the game heaps, just in regards to obviously a ton of 6 agains. If you get enough of them in a row, you fatigue the other team straight out of the game. I think that the NRLW should keep no 6 agains and just trial it and see how it goes. I really do like some of those slow grind games though, like where teams really need to earn their field position. Although I don't like constant calls of penalties and referees getting over involved in the game. If the game flows well enough and it is that just slow grind, sometimes those are the best games of footy to watch because they're the closest. So it could be a good thing for the NRLW if the refs do put their whistles away and there isn't an overload of penalties given away in some of these matches. But I think if you're looking at 6 agains, and you're looking at those professional outfits like the Roosters and the Broncos, who are already the front runners, as you said, for the grand final, if they get used to 6 agains and start doing what Penrith and other sides are doing and just, forcing other teams to a constant 6 agains, keeping, other teams defending for long periods, then you're just going to get absolute domination week to week. And these sides could be more and more dominant. But you could also see other sides maybe take advantage of it as well and become better and more dominant as well. So, look, there's positives, I guess, to both sides of the argument, but I'd probably say leave it as it is for the moment and just see what that product looks like without the 6 agains, because it might provide a little bit of inspiration for the NRL, hopefully, as well, because, the game's obviously fastening up as well. So seeing what the product does look like without the 6 agains, and if you can have a similar quality game without them and have a couple of those slow grinds and teams earning field position and not as many penalties blown with that as well, then I think you've got a pretty decent product there, especially for, the NRLW trying to, gain some viewership and get some people on board, some fans on board with their sides, particularly once they get a couple more teams in there. I think it could be only a good thing to sort of see what that product looks like, and it sort of separates it from the NRL as well, makes it its own thing. So I don't mind it. Look, just quickly before we wrap up, obviously the Broncos got a huge win over the Cowboys. Have the Cowboys done much off-season recruiting? Obviously, they lose Kira Dibb in the 7 jersey. Have they done much to replace Kira Dibb?
I mean, they've got quite a few young girls in that squad. They've done a little bit of recruiting in the off-season. So, as I said, not, I guess, too many experienced teams. But, as I said, they've got Abigail Roach, who they've got playing there on the edge. They've got one of the Warriors girls that they were able to that were able to fill in that 14 position, who I think debuted for the club on the weekend. So that was Lydia, who is a half/hooker. So I believe she was playing on the weekend there as well. They've had a few pregnancy announcements. So they had Jakaya Whitfield, who's one of their probably key players in fullback, announced pregnancy, and they've just had another outside back, Anna Malupo, I believe, winger, announced their pregnancy today as well. So they've definitely had to do some recruiting in the outside backs. So I believe to replace Jakaya, they got Margot Vella from Cronulla, which was a late signing in the preseason. But looking outside of that, in terms of their halves, they haven't gotten too many. They've signed a few more middles, but yeah, not too many key players or very, very experienced players. So I think this will be one of the teams that takes a few years to kind of develop. Don't get me wrong, they've got a couple of players there who are quite experienced. They've got the likes of Jasmine Peters, they've got Talisha Harden, Bree Chester, S.A. Banu, Emma Manselman, who have all played NRLW for a few seasons, Mackenzie Wheel, but again, no one to kind of replace the likes of Kira Dibb, as you mentioned. I do want to go back to the point just quickly before we finish up on the 6 again ruling for the NRLW. I think you took the words out of my mouth. We've already got two such dominant teams in the NRLW with Broncos and Roosters, and with their wins like 50-4 and 34-10, if we get a 6 again, I think they're only going to blow the scores out even more. And I guess some of the feedback that I've had on the women's game from fans and friends and family that watch the game, and even complete strangers that find out that I play footy, say that they like the wrestle and the slower play the ball because it allows the refs to stay out of the game, as you said. And also it kind of gives them the vibe of old school footy. It's a little bit more straight up and down. The wrestle isn't obviously as advanced. The game isn't as fast because of that. And I also don't think that it's a possibility for the girls to be able to keep up with it until we go professional, and that's still quite a few years away. We look at the injuries and things like concussion, or the rates of concussions and stuff like that. And I don't think that that's going to improve if they're going to implement 6 again. So looking at things like the rates of injury that we already have are quite high. And then we're looking at rates of concussion, then obviously the scoreline as well. We don't want those to blow out even further before we even add any more teams. So as you said, I don't think that they should implement it anytime soon. And we need a professional landscape to get our bodies prepared for that increased fitness demand and increased skill demand before we even consider adding that in. So we're still a few years off that, I believe. And as you said, it adds a little bit of a point of difference between the two and keeps the refs out of the game a little bit. So hopefully we're able to have a better quality game as a result because players aren't as fatigued.
Alrighty, well, Sophie, thank you so much for joining us today, jumping in for Jakey last minute. Really good to have you on, and good for me, obviously, to get my head around the NRLW a little bit more. Definitely need to stick my nose in the NRLW a little bit more and get stuck into some of the footy because it is improving very, very quickly. And I guess the teams are evening out a little bit more, even though the Broncos and the Roosters are still the front runners quite clearly. A lot of stars moving in and around different teams, and we're starting to get a really good product there with the NRLW. So really keen to get stuck into some of your analysis of some of the games week to week, Soph.
No, I appreciate you having me back on. And as you said, it's nice to kind of discuss the men's footy as well. It's been quite a few weeks now. But as I said, thanks for having me back on. It was good to chat. But if you guys are listening and haven't listened to any of the NRLW updates, feel free to listen to the utility mode episodes, either previously posted or coming up in the next few weeks. There's definitely some interesting content to be spoken about, and I'll be definitely getting a few more special guests on shortly, so you won't have to listen to my voice the entire time.
Alrighty, too easy. There you go, guys. That's another episode of Momentum. Make sure to go ahead and subscribe to not miss out on any of the episodes, whether it be Utility Mode or Momentum, the Rugby League NRL show. As I said, live stream coming your way Wednesday for the State of Origin. That's going to kick off probably just before the game, about 10-15 minutes before kickoff. Myself and Grant Chappell from Rabbitohs Radio will be a little bit of a collaboration. It'll be on the Rabbitohs Radio YouTube as well. So we'll be taking advantage of a couple of their subscribers too. Chaps will be calling the game. I'll be there to assist, breaking down some of the plays, so it should be good. See you there. Subscribe if you haven't already. We'll see you in the next one.